ETFinalScore.com has East Texas high school sports covered. And now you can take it with you. Get the latest scores from Friday Night Football, articles and videos. Focus in on .me photo galleries and more. So don't miss a thing and get your ETFinalScore.com app today.
Hello and welcome to the ETFinalScore.com Junior College Football Show. I'm Joe Buie and I'm joined as always by Phil Hicks, who covers the area JUCOs. Well, Phil, the playoff spots have all been determined with still 1 week to play, but the seeding is still very much up in the air, so kind of talk about that a little bit.
That's true, Joe. I know you've covered JUCO in the past. Usually the last week there's so many scenarios like who's going to make the playoffs, and then this year, like you say, all four teams have already clinched, but the seeding is still important. Now, NEO, Navarra, and Kilgore are all tied for the top spot right now at 4-1, and TJC's the fourth team at 3-2. But they all four play each other this week.
Interesting.
And so that's going to determine the seeding.
Okay.
So first off, Navarra visits Northeastern Oklahoma up in Miami, Oklahoma, and they're tied. So one of those guys are going to be in first place.
Okay.
Now, will they be joined by Kilgore? If Kilgore beats Tyler, they will be.
Right.
But if Tyler beats Kilgore, it kind of throws everything into a mess.
So could I guess Tyler could end up number 2 all the way down to number 4 seed?
Exactly. They could play any of the number of the teams. They could be number 2 if they beat Kilgore, and say Navarra beats NEO, they would be number 2.
Okay.
And then if they lose, more likely they'd be the 4th seed. Well, they will be the 4th seed, and then they could play either any of the top 3, Kilgore, NEO, or Navarra, depending on what happens.
And isn't there a chance that we have the Tyler Kilgore game coming up this week, and they could turn it around and possibly play again in the playoffs, or Tyler could maybe play NEO? Right,
exactly. It just depends on what happens and if there's a tie and points coming into play. It's kind of a very complicated math.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Phil, the TJC Apaches scored a big win last week against Trinity Valley in Lindale. How did that unfold?
Yeah, the game was played in Lindale because of the Rose Parade here in Tyler, and Trinity Valley came out and played really well. It was their final game because that was their bowl game because they were not going to make the playoffs.
Right.
And Tyler, with Tyrick Rollison and Ryan Young and Leroy Dobbins, they came out and played really well offensively. But what really stood out was the defense this week. They held a good Trinity Valley team to 16 points, and one of those touchdowns was on a halfback toss when they were really kind of up against on the line of scrimmage. But Tyler played really well. One of the better overall games of the year.
Yeah. It looks like a little bit the way last year unfolded. Looks like the Apaches defense is starting to come on a little bit. What have you seen from the defensive side of the ball for the Apaches?
Yeah, exactly. On the line, they're starting to play really well. Chris Loop on the defensive end, he's kind of a madman. He's everywhere. And then Cord Fletcher, the linebacker, who, matter of fact, was the Southwest Junior College Football Player of the Week for Trinity Valley against Trinity Valley. He had a key interception. It was kind of crazy. The Trinity Valley quarterback was being pressured, and he kind of just threw the ball up, and Cord caught it. And he also had 12 tackles, and he just kind of controlled that line of scrimmage.
Okay. All right. And then what else is going on in the conference this week? I guess a couple of inconsequential games, just playing out the string with Blinn.
Right, exactly. Blinn and Cisco play each other, and it's kind of unusual. Usually Blinn's right in the hunt for the playoffs.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened to them this year. They didn't have as good a defense, I think. It's part of the problem. And Cisco's improved their team, but they still didn't make the playoffs. And, of course, Trinity Valley, they concluded their season last week. So
right.
And, of course, basketball will be starting up next week.
True. It's very unusual it's very unusual to have such a haves and have-nots in the conference. Usually, you normally don't have Blinn finishing in the lower half. So normally, with 1 week to go, there are still so many unanswered questions as far as who's going to the playoffs. This is a really unusual season.
Yeah, as like I say, the seedings will be decided this week, but like in the past, many times the Tyler Kilgore game is determined who's going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, but both of them are there, so I don't know how that'll affect how they play. I mean, it's a big rival, so that'll be a really intense game.
So, Phil, talk about this week's regular season finale with the Apaches going to Kilgore.
Yeah, that game is at 3 o'clock Saturday at RE St. John Memorial Stadium in Kilgore. Now, they played earlier in the season, and Kilgore won 38-30, and it came down to a lot of play, which 5 of the last 6 games have been decided by 8 points or less.
Yes.
And even the losing team has a chance to score right at the end to win or tie.
Yeah. Of course, everyone that has grown up around East Texas knows about the rivalry. What can you say about the rivalry from your perspective?
It's very intense. As far as junior college, I think it's the best rivalry in Texas because they are so intense. Not only do you have the Apache Males and Rangerettes, they have their own little rivalry going on, and a lot of fans like that, of course. And but the football teams, they really get inspired to play this game. It's a really hard-hitting game, and it reminds me of maybe a Texas-Oklahoma game or something like that. Not like this year's game, but most of the time.
And Phil, do you have any kind of hunch about what may happen with Navarro's game against NEO?
Well, what I think, if NEO is undefeated at home, and Coach Patterson has really turned that around, and Navarro, although they played well, they didn't play well on the road at Kilgore.
Right.
So I think it's possible that NEO might win that game and get the #1 seed. So if TJC doesn't want to go to Miami, Oklahoma next week, they need to beat Kilgore to maybe get that 3rd slot. And if they did that, that really a lot of combinations. So they would play either at home, at Navarro, or at Kilgore.
Yeah.
Or in Tyler.
True. And as far as Navarro, you probably saw Navarro at their best, did you not?
Yes, they were doing well. A few East Texans really helped. Stump Godfrey was quarterback. He had one of his better games. From Gilmer, yes. He transferred from New Mexico, and he had one of his better games in that he passed the ball
against
well.
The Apaches.
Against the Apaches, yeah. It was a very cold afternoon at Tiger Stadium in Corsicana. And then, of course, Traylon Shedd, who, by the way, committed to SMU this week.
Yes.
Which most East Texas have been following him since he's at KU Goodwin and went to Texas. But now he's going to be at SMU just right up the road. He had an outstanding game. And Middleton also, the running back for Tyler Middleton, he's from Midland. He had perhaps his best game, rushing for 175 yards against Apaches.
Wow.
So their offense was in gear that week.
And Phil, you mentioned, going back to the Apaches, you mentioned that they have the Defensive Player of the Week this week. Don't they also have the Special Teams Player of the Week?
Right. That's true, Joe. Lamar Caraway from Lake Providence, Louisiana. He plays some in the Wildcat for the Apaches, but he had a real key 78-yard kickoff return. Trinity Valley had pulled within 2 touchdowns, and with about, I believe, 8 minutes left. And you know, in football game, a turnover here or there, they could have been right back in the ball game.
Right.
But actually, Coach Palmer said TJC had their hands team in the game, and they were expecting an onside kick.
Okay.
But they looped it over the lineman, and Caraway caught it, made a couple of moves, and went to the end zone.
Oh, wow.
So he's a very outstanding athlete, and he had a couple of more 30, 25-yard returns as well.
All right. And finally, Phil, can you just talk about the way they do the playoffs in this conference every year?
Right, Joe. Next Saturday will be the semifinals, so the top 4 teams play. So the #1 seed will play the #4 seed at their home field, and the #2 seed will play the #3 seed at their home field.
Okay.
And the winners of those games will advance to the November 10th championship game. Now, in the past, Navarro, when they host, if they happen to host, they play on Sunday.
Yes.
Because of high school playoffs.
Right.
Because the Tiger Stadium is a really nice stadium, and they like to get as many high school playoffs as they can. And they've been playing, I think last year Tyler played there on Sunday afternoon, I believe. But but anyway, the winner, if it's one of the other schools, is more likely to be on Saturday, November 10th.
And then hopefully the conference gets at least 2 bowl teams.
You would think so. Depending on the rankings, I think it might be hard for them to move up to the number 2 or number 1 right now. But there's a new bowl that's going to be played at Kyle Field, Brazos Valley Bowl.
Okay.
So that, with Blinn having a losing record, I don't think they could be invited. I believe that's right. So you would think one of the Texas schools or NEO would be invited. And then you also have the Heart of Texas Bowl, which is in Copper's Cove, which the champion has gone to in the past. And then there's a variety of other bowls that they could be invited to, but those are the ones in Texas.
Yeah. All right, Phil. Well, appreciate your input this week. And thanks for joining us, and be sure and check back next week.